standing for the Chair and Vice Chair of the Harlow Council.
Good evening, councillors. Before we sit down, I'd like to have a minute's silence for General Sir George Cooper, who died recently. He won the Military Cross and was a Deputy Lieutenant.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful for the opportunity to just say a few words about General Sir George Cooper. Born on August 10, 1925, Sir George was destined to make a significant mark in history. Sir George had a very successful military career, which should be recognised by this council. For his courage and leadership, commanding an engineer troop in the 55 Field Regiment supporting first the Black Watch and then the Duke of Wellington's regiment during the Korean War, he was, as you said, Chair, awarded the Military Cross. Sir George went on to be promoted to Lieutenant General and be appointed a Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath in 1979. On promotion to a 4-star General in 1981, he joined the Army Board as Adjutant General, responsible for personnel. He went on to be appointed a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the Bath in 1984. But in his retirement, Sir George became Deputy Lieutenant of Essex. He was a man who put Harlow, his county and his country first, a true patriot. Sir George passed away earlier this month, but he will be remembered by local residents as a principled man who was passionate about preserving the special character of Old Harlow where he lived. He took a great interest in local issues recently. He supported the successful campaign to retain the original Old Harlow St John ambulance plaque. My colleagues, Councillor Garnett and Councillor Livings, developed a great friendship with him over many years. I'm sure all councillors would like to pass on their thoughts to Lady Cooper and their son and daughter, Tim and Claire.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Absence. Apologies for absence. Yes, Councillor Mike.
Councillor Phil Waite.
Thank you.
Councillors Mike Garnett and Mike Holloway.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any councillors' declarations? Councillor Carter.
Declare pecuniary interest in items 9A to 9J, except for H, as a remunerated council director of HCS Property Environment Limited. Having taken advice from the monitoring officer, I will remain in the meeting for these items unless specific HCS matters are discussed.
Thank you. Yes, please, Councillor.
Yeah, the same. Thanks, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Davis. Councillor Perry.
Madam Chair, I've been told by the monitoring officer I need to declare an interest as a teacher in Harlow because the budget amendment I moved allocates funding or proposes to allocate funding to the benefit of all children who go to primary and secondary school in Harlow.
Thank you. Minutes of the council meeting of the 31st of October. Are these agreed?
Agreed.
Right, communications from the chairman. Fortunately, because we haven't had a council meeting since the 31st of October, I have been quite busy. I've been to the North Hearts music event, the Making Steps show, bonfire night, live fire show, opened the Dulux Centre, unveiled sculpture at the Harlow Science Park, knife crime community event, Remembrance Day service at the Playhouse and at the Civic, the Interfaith Special Service, Mitzvah Day, Southend Civic Lunch, East Hearts Civic Dinner. I opened a new food warehouse, attended the pantomime at the Playhouse, did the educational awards. I donated a food hamper to the food bank. I went to Daniel Robertson's Memorial Carol Service, the Uttlesford Carol Service, the Royal Association for the Deaf Carol Service, which Taineysdale School actually participated in. Switched on the Harlow lights in the Market Square, carols at St Paul's, Sensory Action Alliance at Chelmsford, Epping Forest Candid by Moonlight, Braintree Festival Concert, Chelmsford Civic Carol Service, Making Steps Award Evening, PAH Carol Service, Christmas Cheer at the Playhouse, Harlow Fields Carol Concert, opened the refurbished Clark's Shoe Shop, delivered hampers to the 4 main services, the Rady Carol Service, Mayor of Hertford Quiz, Chinese Charity Night at Stanford Lee Hope, attended the Harlow Rugby Club to watch England versus Wales Deaf, rugby for both men and women, and it was nice to see Councillor Vincent as well. ECC Civic Dinner, Holocaust Memorial Day at Hertford and Harlow, Brentwood Burns Night. I presented a cheque to Mind. I also visited the Playhouse to accept a cheque in relation to my charities, which was £4,000.
Yeah.
Petitions from the public, there are none. Questions from the public, there are none. Questions from council. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the leader of the council. The Great British Spring Clean-up is taking place this year from the 20th of March until the 13th of April. Can I ask the leader if the council is taking part again like last year?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Carter. The council will be taking part this year. Last year's spring clean was a huge success, with around 1,900 people taking part, many of them children, and over 400 bags of litter collected. As a result, the council is a finalist for the Great British Spring Clean Award at the Keep Britain Tidy Network Awards on the 6th of February. That's next week. I'm sure all councillors are extremely proud of this, and I would like to once again thank all the residents, the officers, the councillors and HDS staff who made this possible. I'm delighted, Councillor Carter, that we will be taking part again. Harlow Council began its promotion this week, and I would invite all councillors to take part and raise the event's profile within the town so that this year's Spring Clean is even bigger.
Councillor Carter, have your supplementary question?
Yes. I first took part in the event in 2016 and then 2017 and 2018. The first time the council physically got involved was 2019 when I received a phone call from Councillor Chris Vince, who wanted to be involved. And with his help, we got the council officers, we had a very successful 2019 operation. This year I've been in touch with the organisers who've given me a lot of information from other areas where we can actually improve our collection rates. I would like from the leader of the council to know who his lead councillor is so that I can liaise with that lead councillor and hopefully we can do an even better job in 2020. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Carter. And only this morning, as I shared a car with Councillor Vince, we were talking about who had contributed to litter picking, and your name came up as a frequent helper out in that great duty. I think initially you should come to me, and I would delegate that responsibility very soon.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Can the portfolio holder for environment confirm what lessons were learned by Harlow Council who was forced to re-tender the current waste and recycling contract?
Councillor Curtin.
Can you read it out?
Do you want this?
Well, councillors, first of all, I'd like to point out we weren't forced to re-tender. We chose to re-tender. It was a choice we had to make, and we made that choice. Apart from that, the main lesson is to always seek, despite problems with the process, the best possible outcome for our community, which I think we achieved. Thank you.
Have you a supplementary?
I do, Chair. Has Harlow Council recovered all of its costs associated with the re-tender of the current waste and recycling contract?
Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Chair. The question that Councillor Charles has asked, he actually knows the answer to, but I'll just say that the discussions with the consultant are still underway. But really, the main lesson we all ought to learn from this, what happened with the refuse tender, is the fact that we need to get rid of compulsory competitive tendering. It's a complete waste of time and money. I was at an event in London last week with contractors and investment fund managers trying to discuss how they can invest in Harlow and Gilston Garden Town. And they pointed out that they, on average, make 2% profit on their contracts, but they spend 3% on tendering for them. It means that they can't actually concentrate on offering higher quality and innovation to their clients, except they can only race to the bottom on price. And of course, in the end, who pays that price? It's the workers that pay that price. Because if you get cut to the bone on competition on price, it's the workers' wages and conditions that go by the board. We can compare the opposite situation with HDS, where we have innovation, we have decent wages, good industrial relations. A company that's integrated into our community, and the money we spend, not only do we get money back, but the money we spend goes into the local economy. So I would suggest we've got 7 years till the next refuse contract, minimum anyway, and during that 7 years, the lesson we should learn is to get rid of compulsory competitive tendering.
Your second question.
Well, thank you, Chair. The answer to that question was no. Will the portfolio holder for environment confirm when he first became aware of alleged workplace bullying and health and safety issues at Veolia Harlow? And I'd like him to put it on record.
Councillor Curtin.
Well, again, Chair, Councillor Charles already knows the answer to the question he's asked because he's had a full briefing from the Chief Executive. The answer is Friday the 17th of January 2020. I can't give an exact time, I'm sorry.
Grateful for that, I wasn't aware. During an interview, your Harlow posted on the 16th of January, representative of local waste operatives accused Councillor Purdy of lying about alleged workplace bullying and health and safety issues at Veolia Harlow. Does Councillor Purdy agree with me that that individual was telling the truth?
Thank you, Chair. Well, once again, we have another allegation from Councillor Charles. The definition of allegation is to make a statement without evidence. So many times he does this on all sorts of issues. In fact, he's done it so many times that really he's now lost all credibility. We, of course, can all remember the road I was going to build through the town park. The travellers' site that I was going to establish in Old Harlow. The fact that I was going to close Hopscotch Road. And of course, just more recently, the fact that the council, through me, because it's my portfolio, was allowing Persimmon to build shoddy houses. All fake news. So what is all this about? Why do we keep getting ourselves into this situation? The truth is that we're really just bit players in the latest YouTube video to add to Councillor Charles' back catalogue of right-wing warrior status. As far as we were concerned, once we did know, which was Friday the 17th of January, once we knew, within one working day, we had met the union, we'd met the regional manager, and the local managers were suspended, as we demanded. That's what you should do when you hear of evidence of workers being bullied and abused. You should act to put it right, and that's what we did. What was Councillor Charles' first thought? To report to the council, as he should do, as a responsible local councillor, evidence of bullying? No. His first thought, it was, how can I use this to my political advantage? How cynical, ignoring the plight of the workers to gain more sound bites for his political campaign to be elected as a Tory MP. I'm afraid, Councillor Charles, your time's up. Consider your position.
Councillor Johnson, you have a question?
Chair, under the Standing Order 11.2, paragraph B, I would like to ask the Leader of the Council, and having given notice to yourself and sought permission, and having given notice to the Chief Executive of the Council the content of my question, given where we are with news this week of some pieces around the UK, will the Leader of Harlow Council reassure residents of Harlow that the flag of the European Union will cease to be flown outside the Civic Centre at 11 p.m. tomorrow?
We don't get it down until
Tomorrow morning?
PM.
Oh, here.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Johnson. I can assure the Council that as we are leaving the EU on the 31st and entering a transition period, it's appropriate to cease flying the EU flag, and that's what we will be doing tomorrow.
I'll ask a supplementary question. Chair, would the Leader of the Council agree with me that instead of the EU flag, we should be flying the triple say of Essex on that flagpole?
At this point, I think I need to take some advice on what flag is appropriate. You've got the question that I was advised of was really bringing down the EU flag.
It shows the urgency of all this, isn't it? We're talking flags.
It's deadly urgent.
Oh, I've got some clarification now.
Serious offender, aren't I?
Yes.
I'll have to slap your wrist. I'd like to make a motion from Councillor. Councillor Shears?
The definition was produced by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on British Muslims in order to build a common understanding of causes and consequences of Islamophobia. It was decided upon after 6-month consultation with academics, lawyers, elected officials, Muslim organisations, activists, campaigners and communities. Harlow Council should adopt this definition to help tackle Islamophobia, build a common understanding common understanding of its causes and consequences, and express solidarity with Muslim communities. It is important that we take a stand. Its urgency is evident. While Islamophobia has been rising in our society and across the world, when support for far right and their extreme white supremacist views is growing, it is urgent. Just a few examples of inflammatory posts on Twitter include calls for mosques to be banned, claims the faith wants to turn the world Muslim, referring to its followers as barbarians and the enemy within. In 2017, Tell Mama recorded a total of 1,330 reports. Of those reports, 1,201 were verified as being anti-Muslim or Islamophobic in nature and as having occurred in the UK between January and December 2017. Also, according to Tell Mama, women are more likely to be attacked or abused if they're wearing Islamic clothing. Just a quick look on Google and I found the following incidents. December 17, McDonald's staff refused to serve a woman because she was wearing a hijab. Imagine that for just one moment. Think how it must have felt to be refused service for wearing a hijab. What is that saying? How is that okay? Well, it's not, is it? In October 2017, a pig's head was thrown through a Muslim family's window, an absolutely appalling crime in Manchester. We will all remember the attack in 2017 in Finsbury Park, where one person was killed and 9 others injured when the van was driven into a crowd 100 yards from the Finsbury Park Mosque, where a group had just been praying in the month of Ramadan. January 2020, anti-Islamic slogans were painted on a building near a mosque in Brixton, South London. All those in public life have a duty not only to challenge but campaign against this hate-filled prejudice. We must work together to rid our country of this evil. Adoption of the definition is a public act that states we will not accept Islamophobia in Harlow, and we recognise it for what it is, helping us to create deeper understanding and awareness at every level of our society. I believe that in Harlow, which is rich in diversity and is a welcoming town, we have a duty to lead by adopting this definition, joining other councils, for instance Islington, Oxford City Council, Hackney, and also the Mayor of London. Let's pass this motion tonight and say to all our Muslim residents, we stand with you always.
Councillor Watson,
None of the none. Right.
do you wish to speak?
Reserve
Or would you like to?
Reserve.
Anybody wishing to speak?
Very good.
Thank you. I'm glad that people have not too much to say. Thank you, Lane, for bringing this motion to the council. More frequently, I'm shocked and offended by the comments I see online or conversations I hear in public that are so full of hate. Recently, my own niece has converted to the Muslim faith. It fills me with pride to see her grow with confidence as she meets new people and learn more about the faith and starts her new life. But it fills me with sadness when I hear negative comments from her own friends and sadly my own extended family. It must not be the norm that people are anxious or afraid to celebrate their faith in the way they dress or they should feel uncomfortable to be on public transport or even enter in the places that they wish to worship. I know that some of the people that make comments are not hateful people, and they certainly don't hate my niece. I know no one could. But they do need educating. The normality of these comments does encourage hate in others. It seriously impacts on our communities and prevents us working as one. We all need clarity on the effects of our behaviour. As a council, we need to lead in the education and set this as an example. Therefore, I fully support and second the motion, and I urge you all to do the same.
Are we all agreed?
Agree.
That's passed.
Good. Okay.
Item 9, reference from cabinet and committees. Is to be approved. Take it on block. Great. Now we come to the main debate.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, Harlow Council's budget proposals for 2020-2021 protect services. It protects jobs and it creates new opportunities. And I'd like to thank the councillors and officers, especially our Section 151 officer and his team, for their hard work in developing it. Under Harlow Labour's proposals, Harlow Council's share of the council tax bill will increase by 1.99% from the 1st of April 2020. This is an extra 9 pence a week for a typical Band C household. Residents should remember that although Harlow Council sends out council tax bills, it only keeps 15 pence of every pound collected. The rest is split between Essex Police, the Fire Service and Essex County Council. For that below inflation increase of 9 pence a week, our budget proposals deliver for residents of Harlow for the 7th successive year no redundancies, no cuts and no closures to any services. Funding for 14 new jobs to help deliver the council's priorities for a growing and ambitious town. With a growing population and the increased workload associated with developing the garden town and seeking investment into our town centre, maintaining current staffing levels is unsustainable. More money to prevent homelessness. While the national picture is of homelessness on the rise, this Labour-run council can be proud. We are bringing homelessness down in Harlow. Full funding for Pets Corner to be re-established into the main budget, guaranteeing protection for this much-loved institution now and into the future. Funding for Harlow Museum so that it can continue to be run and developed by the council. This money includes funding for STEM activities for this year and next year to encourage our children to develop the skills they will need to benefit from the exciting, well-paid science and technology jobs we are bringing to Harlow. If this initiative proves successful, then we'll continue to fund it into the future. Funding for popular public events like the Harlow Carnival, Bonfire Night and the Christmas lights in the town centre, so that Harlow's residents can celebrate important events together as a cohesive community. For the 7th year running, fees in council-owned car parks will be frozen. Our commitment to 1 hour free parking will continue in neighbourhood shopping centres and in the town park. New, cheaper, all year round garden waste collections, saving our residents money. And much of this is paid for by efficiency savings of £422,000 brought about by our forensic approach to rooting out waste and inefficiency. Councillors, our ambitious proposals also set out housing budget plans for 2020-2021. These include funding to be put aside for any further fire safety measures to council-managed tower blocks as required by the Grenfell Tower Public Inquiry. We wait for the report to be concluded, but we're confident we've put sufficient money aside for all eventualities. Nothing is more important to us than the safety of our residents. Funding for improvements to online services so council tenants can view their rent accounts and report repairs at any time of the day, delivering a service fit for the 2020s. Finally, our proposals set out in the capital programme of this budget will see this Labour Council investing in the regeneration of our town. Included in our proposals are the start of a £12 million programme of new council and affordable homes within Harlow. Homes that the children of Harlow residents can really afford to rent on long-term, secure tenancies. £5.5 million for safety and compliance work in council homes. £10 million on other improvements to existing council homes, new boilers and new windows that will bring significant savings to our tenants. Also included is £5 million for the Harlow Science Park development, bringing fulfilling, exciting, well-paid jobs and wealth to our town. And a range of measures in operational and commercial buildings to improve energy efficiency and reduce the council's carbon footprint and reinforce our commitment to addressing climate change. Councillors, we are a confident and capable council that has year on year shown that we can be trusted to work in the best interests of the residents of Harlow over the long term, investing in people, investing in jobs, investing in communities, investing in a future for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Later, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the Conservatives' amendment to the main motion.
Seconded.
Thank you, Chair. The Conservatives' alternative budget proposal set out a clear difference between the Conservatives and the Labour administration in a number of areas. We seek to reduce the burden and tax on the working man and woman in the town. We seek to protect the environment, protect much-loved community services, and invest in future generations and the prosperity of our community. In the motion I have moved a council tax cut of 0.25% when compared to what people are currently paying this year. This means that voting Conservative would result in your council tax being lower by 2.24% after today. This has been funded by savings from the base budget, and the impact of this loss of revenue has been mitigated against by the creation of a council tax realignment reserve, again being funded from base budget. I have also proposed the creation of a Green Initiative Fund. If you remember, the administration moved a climate emergency motion earlier this year, and the Conservatives made a number of key amendments which I'm glad to say got cross-party support. However, I've seen no budgetary provision to implement any of these initiatives, so it begs the question, are the administration truly serious about climate change if they plan to do nothing about it? This fund would allow for preparatory work to implement some of the key tenets of that climate emergency motion, namely active promotion of the WOW programme, installation of electric charging points at the town's parking spaces. I propose to bring back more discretionary services back into the base budget this year than Labour has, such as the paddling pools, fireworks, arts, and as well as Pets Corner. Not only does this mean more services will be fully funded from the Council's general fund, but it also has the added benefit of increasing the life of the existing discretionary services fund, the reserve created by us to protect community assets after the financial crash. Because there are fewer services reliant upon this reserve, the lifetime of that reserve and any discretionary services funded from it will increase to 7 years under the Conservatives, while it will remain with only a 5-year lifetime under Labour. I have proposed the creation of what I call the Education Endowment Funds to the tune of £500,000. These funds will be used directly to assist the town schools in driving up educational attainment. In secondary schools, the focus would be on Key Stage 4 GCSE attainment, and at the primary level, the focus would be on improving the education of practical science, as well as the delivery of modern foreign languages. These are not only already established key drivers by educationists in the town, but they will be essential as we leave the European Union. A more educated populace is a more engaged populace. This has a positive effect in the future on antisocial behaviour, in bringing it down, driving down crime, and increasing life chances and indeed life expectancy. And part of my proposal would also be to top up and increase the STEM fund, which I'm glad the Conservatives moved last year and gained cross-party support. It all feeds into the narrative that the Conservatives are the party of the ladder and of opportunity, and we, no matter who you are or what your background is, we will give you the tools necessary to rise as far as your talents will allow. I've worked to ensure that our current services, namely the discretionary services, are on a more secure footing before we employ more council employees to the tune of £500,000. The problem with employing more people, when some post holders of this council still derive their salary from the discretionary services fund itself, is that we are putting new jobs ahead of existing jobs before we set them on a firm and stable footing. In other words, the administration is employing new people on fixed contracts whilst leaving its current employees' futures in the balance. This also has the added effect of adding £500,000 worth of savings, plus pension costs and future pay awards, as an increasing pressure on the general fund over the lifetime of the medium-term financial strategy beyond its lifetime. Any cut to council tax pales into insignificance by comparison. And one point of difference. The Conservatives will seek to... Thank you, I'm summing up.
I don't think you noticed, Councillor Perry.
Carry on quickly, please.
I'm glad to note the administration has admitted the error that I pointed out and was laughed at about Pets Corner's future funding at Cabinet the other night, and indeed future savings of £100,000 will not be necessary, which draws into stark contrast our competency with the numbers as compared to theirs. They talk of forensic analysis of the numbers, but they don't actually do it. So if you vote for Conservative and you vote for this, we reduce the burden of tax. We seek to protect the environment, protect much of our community services, and invest in future generations in this community with a competent and cogently well thought out plan. Thank you, Chair.
So, my right to speak, Chair.
Councillor Danders.
Chair, on the amendment, I think the facts speak for themselves. From 2008 to 12, the Tories were in charge for the only time of this authority. What did they do? Well, they were consistent. They actually cut the council tax. They froze the council tax all 4 years. How was that paid for? 3 years the staff didn't get a pay increase, these workers that apparently they care for so much. And the 4th year, they actually cut the pay of the staff. So let's remember that. Secondly, all these services that are apparently being taken back in, we've slowly taken them back in because of the mess that they left us with no money for the museum, no money for the paddling pools, no money for the playhouse. Things were actually just palmed off with on a wing and a prayer that they would actually continue. It's taken us ages, systematically, to actually get those services back in-house, and that's what we continue to do. We see with councils like Northampton County Council, when they freeze the council tax for so long, they go bankrupt. Essex froze their council tax for 4 years. They lost out on £80 to £100 million. What are they doing now? They've shut youth services. They've actually made the lives of many Essex people miserable. So that's what happens when you actually freeze. Now, let's take it hypothetically. They've been consistent. Since 2012 to 2020, they have said they will freeze the council tax. In this case, they're actually going to actually give people a penny a week back in their pocket, apparently. In those circumstances, yes. At the end of the day, if you added all that up, that would be £1.5 million at least that this local authority would not have. Where would that money come from? Where are the proposals to actually have? Would it be exactly the same as 2012 when we came into power and found these great big holes in the finance? But apparently I shouldn't ask questions like that because, according to Councillor Joe Charles, we're not there to answer questions. But I'm not surprised they're not there to answer questions. You said it last year. In terms of not answering questions, well, why should I be surprised? Because they can't answer those, although I'd be interested to hear some kind of explanation of where the £1.5 million will come from. And why are we propping up Essex County Council once again? We already do the lights on £100,000. They tried to palm off the libraries onto us, and apparently some nefarious things are going on within the Tory ranks of actually trying to make the libraries run by volunteers. Well, I just reject that. Unfortunately, there's been a big campaign to make Essex go back on its proposals to shut libraries in Harlow and throughout Essex. And we're not picking up. So, Essex, the last time I looked, was the educational authority for Harlow. I'd like it to be Harlow, but at the end of the day, it's Essex. Essex is underfunding the schools, and once again, what are we being asked by the local tourists to do? 4 of them almost a third of their group actually are on Essex County Council. A third of them are actually on Essex County Council, including your good self, Chair. Why on earth aren't you actually lobbying them to spend a lot more on education rather than actually cutting the amounts being spent? So don't bring the thing about education here. Tell it to your county councillors. Most of them are here, although one apparently is sounding around New Zealand for about the third time running for 3 months. But at the end of the day, please, let's be realistic. Let's look at what they did when they were in power, and in those circumstances, let's stick with this budget. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you, Chair. This is my 4th budget, and every year we gather in this chamber, listen to all the ways the party opposite will run this council differently, we laugh at their proposals, we vote them down, and we get on with the job of running Harlow Council. Now, this year is no different. They propose a council tax cut of 0.2%, 0.25%, and this would cost this council £168,000 a year. How do they pay for this? Well, they raid one reserve and they set up a new reserve. And that new reserve is called the Council Tax Reserve, with the value of 319k. How many years does that reserve last? 2. What happens after that reserve runs out? They will cut services. And they also want to create a new reserve to set up free Wi-Fi in the town centre. Now, I don't know if any councillors opposite has actually been up to the town centre recently, but the Water Gardens has free Wi-Fi, the Harvey Centre has free Wi-Fi, the library has free Wi-Fi. I'm pretty sure there isn't a single spot in this town centre you couldn't stand in and get free Wi-Fi. And not only that, if there wasn't free Wi-Fi, you could just use 4G. This idea is outdated. If they had proposed this 8 years ago when they were actually in the administration, it would probably be seen as forward thinking, but it isn't anymore. But now let's get on to the £500,000 that Councillor Perrin and his colleagues opposite want to give to our schools in Harlow as a one-off payment. It only takes a few Google searches to find out how much school budgets have been ravished in this town. On average, schools in Essex face a shortfall of £240 per pupil per year. It accounts to £47.4 million shortfall in the year 2020. I will not take lectures from any Tory councillor about our schools not being funded properly. But in Harlow, my own school, Burnt Mill, faces a cut of £660 per pupil. In Stewards, a school that I know Councillor Perrin knows well, their students face cuts of £752 per pupil. Again, I will not take lessons. So how far will 250k to this secondary school go to mitigating the Tories' cuts? It equals £40 per student for 1 year. As I stated earlier, Burnt Mill School is already facing £660 per cut per person. It was like applying a sticking plaster to a gaping wound. If Councillor Perry was serious about fixing the damage his government has caused to education, maybe he can lobby his friend Robert Halfon, the chair of the Education Select Committee, and tell his Tory government to fund education properly. The alternative budget is all about grabbing cheap headlines with no long-term strategy. One cheap gimmick here, which we'll pay for years to come. But it's okay. The residents of Harlow already know this. It's why they vote for us every year. And let's hope that continues. Thank you, Chair. I will not be voting for this amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to speak. I have to say, I do support Councillor Perrin on one issue. No one likes to pay taxes. But actually, people will be prepared to pay taxes if they can see it's going to be a benefit to them, to their family, and to their community. And if he does feel, like I feel, about the burden of tax, then, as my colleagues have said, go speak to the county council, go speak to the police crime and fire commissioner, because that's where the money's going. It's not coming into Harlow. But what we do have is we have a stable and we have a successful council with a Labour administration. Now, in relation to this proposal, the first thing I can say, Chair, is I'm really disappointed that for the first year in 5 years there is no mention of roundabouts. I had read, it was all ready, but you spoilt it for me over this. But it is ludicrous to think that this council is not doing its bit and it needs to do more about the environment. Because we do need to work together, we do need to find solutions about reducing and removing those items that are causing the problems we have in the whole world. But this administration, under this Labour administration, is working with businesses, is working with the community, is working with partners to find those solutions so that we can leave a good legacy for the future community. I have to say, I completely agree, so I won't, about the education money. It's smoke and mirrors. It is putting something somewhere to do something with at some time that no one knows what it's all about. People will understand that actually if we're doing something, then they will take the burden. And therefore we feel that this option is quite simply ludicrous and unfair. And it's also completely nutty that actually this council is investing in people to make the changes that we need, bringing in new skills, bringing in new talent, going out to local businesses, promoting Harlow, its culture, its values. Our officers currently do a fantastic job, but we need to invest in them by bringing in new people to support them in carrying on this success story. Yeah. So as always, I am really sorry that actually there is nothing in this amendment budget except for a bit of smoke and a bit of mirrors, and I will also be voting it down. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I stand to second Councillor Perrin's proposal for a council tax cut for Harlow District Council. Listening to the speeches opposite, you'd think that this was something unexpected. They should know by now, Chair, that this Conservative group forensically analyses the budget book every year, works with the officers, for which we pay thanks every year, and thank you once again to the financial officers for the assistance they provided my budget team this year, and finds a way each year to provide at least a council tax freeze. I know it concerns Councillor Danvers, who frankly speaks more and says less than anyone else in this chamber at the moment, having listened to the diatribe that he came out. I'm surprised he didn't mention Margaret Thatcher. But anyway, we were waiting for that, we had a bet on it. But anyway, Chair, this Conservative group has put together a budget that balances, that's been cleared by the Section 151 officer, that provides a council tax cut, and means at the end of tonight, when you pass your budget, as I'm sure you will, given that you have the votes in the chamber, council tax will be 2.24% higher than it needed to be. And that is the point, Councillor Durkin. No one minds paying a little bit of tax extra if it's required. We have consistently shown on this side of the chamber each year why it is not required. And the reason it's not required this year is there is no need to spend an additional £500,000 on extra staff. I can make sense of it perhaps if the staff were needed, but when we asked at Cabinet, the one chance the opposition gets to identify issues with the council's budget, the one chance that we get to ask questions, we asked what these staff are for, and the leader said, I'm not going into that at the Cabinet meeting, this is not the place for it, I'm not going to tell you, other than to tell us that each Cabinet member would get a member of staff. I wonder, does the union of the member of staff have to match the union of the Cabinet member? Or is that not how it works in the Labour Party? Councillor Mullard, Councillor Mullard talks, well, he talks a good story, but there's nothing there in criticism of this opposition amendment that we haven't heard before. There's nothing new, and the reason for that is there's nothing actually wrong with the opposition amendment. There's nothing wrong with providing our hard-working residents a council tax cut at one of the things that I was elected to this chamber to do. I was elected on a low tax manifesto. I consistently have been elected on a manifesto for the last 22 years. And the reason that I was elected on that manifesto is the residents of Harlow don't like paying unnecessary extra tax, Chair. They don't want to pay for extra officers. They want a simple council tax. And that's what this Conservative group on Harlow Council will continue to deliver. I must say, Chair, to sum up though, I'm really fed up with the hypocrisy on the other side of the chamber. Each year, when we find another way to provide a council tax freeze or a cut, the opposition says, yes, but you're putting unnecessary pressure on the future of the budget. We've made sure that for the term of the medium-term financial strategy, there is no additional pressure on this budget by this council tax cut. But Chair, the argument falls down when you then put £500,000 worth of pressure, plus unidentified pressures for pension costs and future pay awards, on a budget with no way of mitigating that. And that's what this Labour administration are doing, Chair. They're putting unnecessary pressure on the budget to provide each of their cabinet members with an extra support person to provide £500,000 extra in tax. Now, Chair, the one thing we haven't heard tonight, and it's a shame so far, which should have been in the leader's introduction to his budget, is the mistake that was made in the Labour Party's budget books and budget calculations. I would like to hear from them at some point during this debate about how they'd explain that debate. Because frankly, Chair, they laughed at us when we raised it at the Cabinet meeting. They laughed and said, we've got it wrong. It turns out we hadn't, Chair. And there is a mistake in the budget papers, and I'd like to hear the administration's response to that. So in summary, Chair, the Conservative opposition budget tonight reduces the burden of taxation, supports the discretionary service fund for extra years, provides protection for services around the town, and makes sure that council tax cut is delivered. Thank you, Chair.
Somebody else wants to speak?
I know Mr. Bando.
Chair, councillors, I've spent many hours over the last day and a half looking through the Conservative alternative budget proposals in detail, and I'm sorry to say they don't stack up. In fact, they're a shambles. Councillor Mullard has made clear in his remarks, but what Councillor Perrin has presented is a mixture of sleight of hand, moving money from one pot to another whilst pretending he's found new money, and making provision to cover up for the failures of his Tory chums on Essex County Council. Councillor proposes we ask Harlow Council taxpayers to cough up £500,000 to provide for our schools, provision that we already pay 85 pence in every pound that we collect for Essex County Council to deliver. If Tory Essex can't deliver what schools need from the 85 pence in every pound they already take from Harlow, what does that say about a Tory administration? And what does it say about the 4 Tory councillors opposite who sit on Essex County Council? They propose STEM funding. Fair play, Councillor Perrin. That's a good idea. A great idea. That's why it's already in our budget, as an item provided through the museum for this year and the next. And then we'll evaluate it, and if it's successful, we'll continue to fund it.
Like my idea.
They propose to cut the new jobs we need to increase the council's ability to deliver to a growing population and to meet our obligations to the Garden Town development. Councillors, meeting more unavoidable demands on the council without increasing the workforce is unsustainable. Actually, it represents an effective cut in staffing per head of population. The Tory government cut police numbers, and we saw the chaos that brought about, leaving them to have to begin recruiting new officers to replace the shortfall they had caused. You cannot deliver decent public services without adequate staff to deliver them. A lesson the Tories should have learned from the shortages of nurses, the shortages of GPs, and the shortages of teachers that they have brought about. Either they don't want to learn from their mistakes, or they don't really care about quality public service delivery. All this to save a penny a week. But the key question about their alternative budget is one of sustainability. Councillor Danvers spoke about how that penny a week council tax adds up. In fairness, Councillor Perrin, you've created a £351,000 fund to cover the loss of revenue brought about by your 1 penny a week cut in council tax. But it covers that loss for just 3 years. And then there's a black hole. A black hole that could only be met in the future by savage cuts to services or large increases in council tax in years to come. So having considered the alternative proposals put forward by the Conservative group, I had long discussions with our Section 151 officer, our financial expert, and he has told me, while the budget does balance, it does so only for 3 years. And he has concerns, serious concerns, about the sustainability of the Tories' proposals beyond 3 years. And those are concerns he communicated to the Tories before this evening. It doesn't balance. But let's not talk in general terms. I know Councillor Carter likes the detail. So here's some. Detail provided by our independent experts. Since the Conservatives lost control of Harlow Council in 2013, the cumulative cost of Tory budget proposals would be a budget black hole of £898,549. And remember, they also opposed the formation of HTS, which has returned £1,121,000 to council coffers. If we'd followed their plans over the last 8 years, we would today have a cumulative black hole amounting to £2,019,549. That's the entire cost for a year of the Playhouse, a year of the community safety team, the Leah Manning Centre, the Youth and Citizenship team, abandoned vehicles collections, the licensing team, playgrounds, pavilions and sport pitches, all without funding if we'd followed your budget proposals over the last 8 years. Councillors, theirs is a budget full of gimmicks that is dangerously unsustainable in the long term and that would lead Harlow into the precarious position of failing Tory towns like Northampton. It's not a serious document, it's a penny dreadful, and it needs to be voted down.
Right, we'll go to a name vote on the amendment.
So I'll call names in order, and you can either vote for, against or abstain. Calling order, Councillor David Carter.
For.
Councillor Simon Carter.
For.
Councillor Joel Charles.
For.
Councillor Nick Churchill.
For.
Councillor Jean Clark.
Against.
Councillor Mike Danvers.
Against.
Councillor Bob Davis.
Definitely against.
Councillor Jodie Dunn.
Against.
Councillor Tony Durkin.
Against.
Councillor Tony Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Tony Hall.
For.
Councillor Eugene Harvey.
Against.
Sorry. Councillor Maggie Holbrook.
Against.
Councillor Mark Ingle.
Against.
Councillor Shannon Jezard. Councillor Andrew Johnson.
I wish to be recorded as voting for a council tax cut.
Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Definitely for.
Councillor Shona Johnson.
For.
Councillor Sue Livings.
For.
Councillor Francis Mason.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Mullard.
Against.
Councillor Russell Perry.
For.
Councillor Danny Purton.
Against.
Councillor Laney Shears.
Against.
Councillor Clive Souter.
Abstain.
Councillor John Stratton.
Against.
Councillor Emma Toll.
Against.
Councillor Chris Vince.
Against.
Councillor Nancy Watson.
Against.
Councillor Mark Wilkinson.
Against.
I think it's going to be close, guys.
Chairman, that was 10 abstention, and is lost.
So the amendment. Anybody wish to speak on the Councillor Pope?
Yes, Chair. I would like to address the issue of the so-called extra staff, as if they're just people we recruit to stand around and occupy offices. One of the reasons why I needed new staff is because we were facing an increasing problem with HMO properties in this town. There were also planning obligations that weren't being carried out, and we weren't able to keep track of them and to take the necessary action because we didn't have the staff to do the inspections. We've managed, and I'll be reporting this in more detail at future cabinet, we've managed to aggregate to ourselves some powers which we should have had before, but we've now got powers to deal with HMOs in a variety of ways. We now need to have the staff to implement those powers. No good having powers if you haven't got the means to implement them. So this is an issue that our community really feels strongly about, and it's not just an issue that's slowly creeping in, it's accelerating. All over the town, people are finding that next door is being converted into an HMO, and they want the council to do something about it. We now are able to do something about it. We need the staff to implement those policies, and I think that those extra staff will be
The skills that can push us forward. In my portfolio, economic growth, even though we found the money through the funding of the science park, it is still absolutely vital that we have talented people who can actually go out there and support and market and create opportunities for those. I commend Andrew Brabbage, I commend Jane Greer for everything that they have done, but of course Andrew has moved on to greater and brighter things, and therefore it's really important that we bring in a new team to support the existing team to make the differences that we want to. We need to do more around the enterprise zone, and again to bring people in who can focus on those particular issues is a good decision to make by this council today. It's about helping existing businesses, but it's helping grow new businesses. And why that's important, it's because of the economy. Because more businesses that we have, we get the business rates, but we get jobs, we get opportunities, we get careers, and we get aspiration. So this budget isn't a standstill. This budget, for the first time, is actually moving forward to actually say we are now ready, and we can and we will make the differences. The second point, which hasn't been mentioned, but I have to say from our leader's point, a celebration about the tree planting, about how we have been so driven to actually do our particular bit over those particular issues, and that's good for business because people see as they drive through or looking around actually the difference that this Labour administration is making. I would also like to mention one thing just in case my leader has forgotten. A number of years my favourite Councillor Johnson, Councillor S. Johnson, and myself, with the very late and sadly missed Guy Mitchinson, had a great discussion a number of years ago about wildflower planting. And we had, a number of years ago, decided that we were going to go around and bomb the place with wildflowers to make a difference. Now, but actually, through our leadership and through the commitment of the environmental team and HTS, we're going to make it happen. And I have to be saying, I want to be planting that first one, and actually I want to do it in memory of Guy Mitchinson, who was actually so central to those discussions at that particular time. Third issue, parking, no change. That's really important for the little businesses in the hatches and the areas that we have. Now I have to say, I'm all slightly frustrated that we don't have any empty shops at the moment and we have a waiting list. Unfortunately, some of the shops are nail bars, but actually they are popular. That is what the local people want at this day. What we also know is that people who use those services then go on and either use other shops in those areas. So there's always positivity about it. But to encourage those local businesses and to support them, it is a compliment to this council that yet again we have not increased the parking charges for those particular areas. This is a budget for growth. It is a budget for opportunity. It is about local jobs for local people to make the difference. What we need to be doing is breaking, and I think we have, the warehouse mentality of what people view Harlow as. We have the Poundland warehouse grant, so we've had a few more built, but actually we've got real growth, real jobs, real careers, real aspiration for our local next generation. And this budget, under our leadership and on Labour, is making that happen. So I absolutely truly believe that once that message goes out to the people of Harlow, they will recognise the value of that amount of money that we are asking, because it is actually taking us to the next dimension and the next place. And my final point is, and I just have to go back to my good friend Councillor Perrin about this ladder mentality. Yes, have a ladder, but actually put the ladder on solid, safe and reliable land and property before you start climbing. And this is what this budget is. This is this budget from a Labour administration that understands, respects and values our community, and I'm absolutely delighted to support it. Thank you.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see we're not moving any housing amendments tonight. Firstly, we support the investment and provisions for fire safety works in the light of the dreadful disaster and in the other works to keep our properties up to a decent home standard. Secondly, we can hardly oppose projects that we proposed in previous years. At this point, may I welcome the assurance from the resources portfolio holder at Cabinet last week to review the allocation of the HSS dividend between the General Fund and the HRA. Last year, we proposed paperless correspondence to tenants and to launch tenant profiling. Too difficult, we were told. What about GDPR? There's a growth item tonight for £30,000 in the HRA for the annual subscription they kept for the housing digital portal. This will allow tenants to interact with both the housing service and HTS to make transactions online 24/7, including correspondence. It's already possible to collect data for tenant profiling, and there is already a working group well underway to explore the implications. 2 years ago, we proposed a council house building programme, which was rejected as too expensive and too risky. And we also proposed a new HCS company for building houses. And I'm sure Councillor Mullard had a good laugh 2 years ago. So we were not surprised that later on that year, 2018, the council registered a new company, HCS Property and Regeneration Limited. Then last year, the Labour administration finally proposed a pipeline of new council houses. The pipeline mainly consisted of 14 houses in Bushycroft and 3 in the Readings. The Readings already had a budget of £70,000 for preparatory costs for 18-19. Tonight there is another pipeline of new council houses, which includes 14 houses in Bushycroft, on land it transpires today the council does not own, and 3 dwellings in the Readings, where the preparatory costs have rocketed up to 382,000. The administration is always moaning about cuts and having no money. Now they want to build 3 council properties at an average cost of £466,000. £466,000 each. You could buy a very nice 4-bed house in Church Landing for that, or even 2 2-bed houses. So I have to ask whether this is the best use of scarce resources. In those immortal words of John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. Sadly, in last year's budget there were preparatory costs for 18-19 and again this year, which means you've not only not built any council houses, you haven't even started building. The new HCS company is still on the shelf, with no directors and no business plan. From the answers at last week's Cabinet, there is no sign of a business plan emerging in the near future. So, if you're not going to build any houses, why have a housing company? The pipeline is dependent on the use of right-to-buy receipts, which must be used within 3 years. Last year, you lost over £3 million paid back to the government because you weren't organised enough to use it. By the end of March 2020, there is a forecast balance of 9 million of right-to-buy receipts. With the delays we have seen so far, how confident can anyone be that these sums will be used before they too have to be repaid? To lose one lot of £3 million may be unfortunate. To lose two looks like carelessness. So by having to rely on opposition proposals, with no housing company, no housing starts, eye-watering costs for new council properties, and the announcements made tonight, we can only conclude that this administration is incompetent and no longer fit for office. It's time they gave way to somebody who is.
Didn't know there was any liquid in the press net. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think after this debate tonight, I think the first thing I'm going to do personally when I get home tonight is Google what the all-party support means on my iPad, because it's very clear that there's a lot in politics that sometimes divide us, but also there's things that I think we are united on. What's pretty clear tonight, that what the opposition say during the last 12 months, which they famously say they've got all-party support with us on, doesn't actually manifest into reality when it comes to the budget. Myself, Councillor Pert and Councillor Ingle, earlier this year, gave evidence to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee regarding HMOs, enforcement HMO issues across the town. There was all-party support with a recommendation that we need to enhance our HMO enforcement area. What we have done is taken an action from that recommendation, not just sit there and deny it in front of the cameras. We've taken an action on that, and we have brought a budget tonight that enforces more people for HMO enforcement. So all-party support seems to have gone. A couple of years ago, we organised for myself an all-party briefing on the 2016 Homeless Reduction Act, because that puts extra responsibility on all local authorities in regard to homelessness prevention and the prevention of rough sleeping. What we have done again is taken an action from that and enhanced and increased our housing options team. What the parties opposite now are doing is saying they don't support that anymore. They're going to vote against that. Something that 2 years ago, 12 months ago, they actually said they supported and it would get all party support. Obviously that means nothing now. As far as housing is concerned, I did welcome some of the comments from Councillor Carter, not all of them, but I welcome some of them. It's been a really successful year in housing. Housing still remains a top priority for me and its administration. We recognise by effective partnership working, we will deliver on our priorities. Top priorities include more and better housing, generally affordable, tackling homelessness, helping to improve choices for those in housing need, increasing the range and type of supported housing, improving residents' health and well-being, and a raising of housing standards. Working in partnership with our local agencies, we have received additional grant funding for tackling homelessness and rough sleeping. The supported housing service on this council has again been nationally recognised in the form of accreditation to telecare services. This, together with strong performance for repairs, income management and empty homes management, means that your housing service continues to be well regarded nationally and locally. The housing revenue account, again, echo, because I thought it had all party support, but now I'm not so sure, that we are putting money to one side for fire safety. It is paramount with health and safety residents in this town. Again, it's something with actions, not just spoken wild words about, we've actually put money to one side again this issue. We've maintained and done 80,000 repairs again this year. Leaseholder and tenant satisfaction has increased in the last year. Continued reduction in numbers identified from suffering from fuel poverty, which the League has already recognised. A reduction of 75% in the number of people sleeping rough in this town. An increase of 229 families that were prevented from being homeless and made them put them in the right area to stay in their own houses. We've raised standards in temporary accommodation provision to have a reduction in our numbers. We aim with this budget, Chair, to go even further to improve on those important services for tenants and residents in this town. And that's why I'm proud and will be voting in favour of this. These are recommendations that will protect and enhance all the residents within this town. Thank you, Chair.
Well, Chair, I'm delighted to receive the title of right-wing warrior in this council because Labour-run Harlow Council has got its priorities all wrong. A council tax increase and the biggest expansion in the size of the council's bureaucracy for decades, without a clear plan, is irresponsible. The Labour Party didn't need to increase council tax. Our alternative budget has shown how Harlow Council could invest in frontline services, commit funds to support improvements to educational attainment, and do all that.
Point of order, Chair. Is it acceptable for Councillor Ingle to talk over Councillor Charles?
Councillor Ingle, please let me speak.
I'm sorry, I'm just when we talked about sustainability. The Section 1.5 officer disagrees.
We sit quiet listening to you. Councillor Charles, carry on, please. With due respect.
Support improvements to educational attainment and do all of that with a council tax cut under the Conservatives.
Is it?
The truth is that an ideological decision has been taken by the Labour Party to increase the cost of living in Harlow and increase the size of the council, storing up problems for the future. A far more sensible approach by this administration would have been to adopt a far more private sector approach to the recruitment of the 14 additional posts. They could have issued a statement explaining the added value of each of the posts and what they would bring to the authority. They haven't. They could have conducted an audit of existing in-house skills to understand future manpower requirements that are needed in the future, and women. They haven't. They could have developed an expansion strategy that was linked to their corporate plan to inform what services of the council needed additional investment. Guess what, people? They haven't. 14 posts have been plucked out of the air to achieve a headline without any consideration to the long-term impact. An expansion of staff does not automatically mean the quality of frontline services will improve. It's about leadership, priorities, and a strategy underpinning the delivery of what will make an impact on frontline performance. The administration has failed on all of those fronts. As we head towards the local elections in May, it will be for this Conservative group to set out a vision for transforming our public services for the better. Labour's budget fails to deal with the growing calls to make council services more responsive to the needs of residents. It is this Conservative group that will focus on targeted investment to improve council services. Labour have also adopted a smoke and mirrors approach to building more houses. So will I. Harlow needs more council houses, but the council's plans set out in this budget remain unachievable until they develop a clearer implementation plan. There is a vehicle for delivering on the building programme, as Boris Johnson would say, oven ready, but the council was effectively, through inaction, mothballed the new HTS subsidiary. There was no mention in the council's budget press release about tackling antisocial behaviour in Harlow. A concern and worry for many residents. The council must never be complacent about this challenge. It is disappointing that the administration has decided to ignore this priority in their budget. Conservatives have a clear plan to run Harlow Council, tackling climate change, supporting young people to achieve their educational ambitions, and building more council housing will be the core priorities of future Conservative administration. Labour are letting Harlow down. They have failed to put forward a coherent budget and have been slow to respond to the serious issues that are impacting frontline services, as we have seen with the waste contract crisis, Councillor. This administration is more interested in mounting a protest than running frontline services. Only the Conservatives have a clear plan for Harlow's future. Residents want Harlow Council to focus on getting the basics right. Conservatives put residents' priorities first. Thank you, Chair.
And cut.
Thank you, Chair. It's funny, I'm not a big fan of meetings. I much prefer to be out in the community, litter picking, planting trees, and credit to two councils on the other side and many councils on this side for going out last weekend and planting trees. And I think it was a wonderful community event. But actually standing here in this meeting, I'm very proud to be part of this Labour administration and very proud of the budget that we're putting forward. You won't be too surprised to hear me say that. And I want to publicly thank Councillor Danvers, the portfolio holder, as well as the officers that supported him in putting together this budget. It's a budget which protects vital council services. It's a budget which protects services that we love so much, like Pets Corner. Try not to mention Poppy the Goat, I've done it. And a budget which recognises what our town really holds dear. Now, we can't judge the Tories on their budget proposals because, unfortunately, they're not going to happen. However, we do know that the Tories, when they were in power, they did fail to secure long-term funding for Pets Corner and for the Playhouse, Poppy the Goat, that has been out on the hooves. And apparently, we've just been told by Councillor Charles, well done for the tree planting, but he comments that apparently raising council tax is somehow ideological. It's interesting that the Police and Crime Commissioner, who is a Tory, also wants to raise council taxes. So I don't know quite how that works. But finally, I want to talk about the commitment which is really, really important in this budget, which is more funding for council staff. Councillor Purton has previously mentioned the officers, the enforcement officers for HMOs. I don't know about anyone in the room, but I've had a lot of people, a lot of residents speak to me about their concerns about HMOs. Of course, there is a place, what with the housing crisis, for HMOs, but they need to be properly managed, and I'm glad that we're taking steps as a council to do that. There are additional staff for the environment and planning team, clearly an area we need to focus on as a council moving forward, and I won't go on about that because Councillor Durf has touched upon that. We're also going to fund a licensing officer, which is again really important to investigate complaints to do with any licensed premises. The thing is, whether we like it or not, our town is growing, and we need to ensure we have the officers that can deal with the growing town. Otherwise, it becomes like teaching. You're asking the same officers to do more and more, and that clearly isn't sustainable. And I appreciate the irony of me saying that, and I'm glad Lisa's not here, because I appreciate that I give officers as much work to do as anybody. But I want to thank them for that. The reality is, we are a growing town, so if we don't invest in more staff, in reality, that is a cut to services, and will have a negative impact on residents, as well as a negative impact on the staff that are here. So again, I'd like to finish just by thanking Councillor Danvers, thanking the council officers for all their work, and to the Tories who are playing bingo. I've got Police and Crime Commissioner elections, Poppy the Goat, and litter picking in one speech. Thank you very much.
Chair, Standing Order 1114, paragraph B. I wish to ask Councillor Danvers, as portfolio holder for resources, a question on the reports before us that came to Cabinet last week. At that meeting, Councillor Danvers laughed and said that Councillor Perrin was wrong for pointing out an error in the budget papers with regards to Pets Corner. Will Councillor Danvers now apologise for that?
was said was just to pick up this issue. It was raised at the Cabinet last week to require the full funding of Pets Corner at the base budget of 128,000. However, the previous published report in January set the current budget at a figure of 100,000. So we've needed the extra 28.
That these two positions are necessary. And I just want to explain to you, one is the Community Economic Development Officer. And that person's role will be in part, by no means in total, but to optimise the opportunity of Public Health England's arrival in Harlow, which is a massive opportunity for this town. I mean, we'd all agree on that. And if I tell you that today, before this meeting, I chaired the first meeting of the newly formed Community Liaison Group, which we advertised in Harlow Times, and we had a fantastic response, and we've got a really strong group of local residents coming together to meet quarterly with senior management of Public Health England. To meet with, I didn't understand, sorry. To meet with senior management of Public Health England and to talk about in the first instance the construction phase and the consequences of that and the impact of that on local residents. And then I guess over the longer term, more strategically, to look at what it means to have a world-class science body in our town and how that can impact positively on our education, on our cultural offering, on our business offering, on all the opportunities that we want our residents to have. Now, that was a fantastic 2-hour meeting, and we had senior civil servants there. We had about 8 members of the local residents, and it was really, really positive. But if I tell you that the head of service had to take the notes for that meeting, I mean, it was terrific to have her there. But it's crazy, it's much too expensive to have 2 hours of her time taken up on note-taking for, you know, what is going to be a regular residents' forum. We need a dedicated officer who is making those links between Public Health England and the schools and the businesses and using the council resource, using our Harlow Times to advertise the many, many opportunities, communications needs and all sorts of things. So I have no hesitation in backing that role. One of the things that we all know, and you've spoken about it a lot, is the need for STEM education in our schools, and that's going to be a major priority for Public Health England. You know, they've got the Science Day down at the Leisure Zone coming up, but there's so much opportunity, but they need that support from the council to make that work. Similarly, another role is the Cultural Partnerships Officer. You know, I had the meeting with the regional head of the Arts Council here in the middle of last year, saying, Ryan was there, they want to invest in our town. The Arts Council recognises Harlow has been underinvested in. They want to put money in, but they have to see a coherent strategy with all the cultural groups coming together and identifying a plan that they can all contribute to, that the Arts Council can have confidence that we are a viable, investable, cultural destination. You know, we've got the museum. I don't know about your children, but my children, they've left Harlow to go on excursions to learn about the Romans. They should be studying it here in our museum. The development that we're doing around town is throwing up more Roman artefacts than they can store. You know, it's astonishing. We've got such richness in this town, but we need a cultural officer supporting the museum, supporting the other organisations. Raised Roof are in here for the Holocaust Week. We need the council to be able to support those groups, to work together, to develop a strategy, to be the interface with the Arts Council to ensure we get the multi-million-pound investment that we believe we are in line for. But if we don't put in, if we do not show willing, we will not get that investment. And it would simply be irresponsible of us. And I say that with all sincerity. I'm not combative and I don't want to pick fights, but it would be irresponsible not to meet those needs for those two positions. And I have worked with Jane for 2 years and I feel utterly confident in recommending them. I can't speak for my other colleagues, but I have every confidence that they have worked as closely with their department heads as I have and feel as passionate and confident and as excited as I do about the new appointments. And I commend them to you, and thank you.
Councillor Harlow, can you turn your mic off, please?
Oh, of course.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chair. I did become a little bit concerned when I was listening to the administration's comments on the budget, because I found myself agreeing with some parts of it, and then I realised they were doing the usual trick of sprinkling a little bit of Orwellian magic over what they were saying. For example, I enjoyed hearing about their continued commitment to funding the first 3 hour of car parking in the town's car parks, their commitment. And then I just thought, hang on a minute, I actually had to lead a public campaign where I had to have an online campaign, a debate in this chamber. I debated with Councillor Durkin on the radio, where I made all the arguments he made tonight about the bad impacts that getting rid of that would to have on local business, and they U-turned on their budget decision, and there we are. And I hear about it now as their continued commitment.
Well done.
Thank you. I hear about their bringing thousands of jobs to Harlow. Their massive acumen is bringing together thousands of jobs to Harlow at the enterprise zone. And I seem to remember, again, hang on a minute, I was in administration and I was the portfolio holder who was responsible at the time for leading the administration's bid on enterprise zone status. And our MP, Robert Halford, was there, and he led the charge on that. And we did work with partners from all kinds of external bodies, and we called it cross-party support. But that's disappeared, and now it's them bringing things to the town, it's them doing stuff, and the cross-party working on this seems to be falling away. I heard about the STEM fund. And what a brilliant idea that was, and they're going to continue with that STEM fund. And whose idea was that? That was my idea, and I brought it in a motion and amendment last year. I was glad we got cross-party support, but it's their idea. They're taking that forward. And this is what we continue to hear time and time again. There are so many statements that come out of that side of the chamber that the Ministry of Truth would be proud of some of the things they're pulling out there. Oh, the Playhouse was in danger under the Conservatives. We didn't shut it. They did. They shut the Playhouse. And yet we were the ones apparently that put its future in peril. We hear of the continual impact that a council tax cut would have. A council tax cut that this party would move in administration. And we talk about the £351,000 we put aside to mitigate any impact over the term of the medium-term financial strategy, £351,000. You can only plan with this medium-term financial strategy for 3 years into the future. The whole point of the cycle is you then do another one and another one, because we cannot plan continually ad infinitum. But in one foul stroke, £500,000 is put as a major pressure. And you talk very passionately, Councillor Harvey, about the good work that the officers of this council do. And I agree, they do excellent work. But some of those officers you mentioned, they are funded from the discretionary services fund still, and they have not been brought over into the base budget. That is the concern that we have with some of the moves you are making. Councillor Danvers, he offers up thin gravy when he's talking about some of the things in his own budget. His only thing he can talk about in his own budget is to tear ours down. I hear very little defence of what he's proposing to do, and he still doesn't wish to apologise for laughing at Cabinet when I pointed out that there was £100,000 that had not been accounted for in terms of Pets Corner. I have an email from the officer apologising and saying, yes, you are quite correct, Councillor, there was £100,000 put in the medium-term financial strategy, which was an oversight, and it has now been removed. That was the question I was asking, but I couldn't get the answer from you because you didn't understand your brief. So much for your forensic analysis of the situation. That is the problem I have with your budget. I can't trust it. It could be the best budget in the world, but I couldn't trust the figures you put forward because you don't know me. And that's why I won't be supporting this budget.
Councillor Danvers, do you wish to speak? Councillor Danvers, do you wish to speak?
No, Chair, no.
Councillor Strachan? No.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points, really. I'd be proud if the people that are coming under me would be in the union, because I only belong to one union, and that's the credit union. So I hope the Harlow Credit Union, so hopefully they will be part of the Harlow Credit Union. But I've heard lots that we don't need this, but we're investing in our town. The people that I've got here don't actually bring more investment into our town. Councillor Charles says that we never looked at any of this. We didn't have any staff analysis or anything like that. Actually, we did. We spent a lot of time. In fact, my Section 151 officer and the properties officers, we spent a lot of time looking to see what we needed and where we were falling short. And at the moment, we bring in £6.5 million a year profit to this council. But to bring even more money in, we're at an impasse. We can't go any further. We're stuck. We've got places like investment, like the Nexus building we've been looking after. We've got another property that will be coming online soon. We need to actually service that. We've got hundreds and hundreds of other properties that we let that need looking at all the time. New leases, actually better terms, making sure that the actual properties are fit for purpose. At the moment, our team is so small, not because of lots of things like people have left and they've been replaced, people have taken part-time out than that. We've got an officer who comes in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I can ring him at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and he's still here, day in and day out, because there isn't enough staff to cover what he does. Shouldn't we be looking after people like that? You can only get so much time. And it isn't about that we're not looking at the long-term economic impact. Actually, in this part, we have been. I spent hours and hours with my Leeds officer, Owen. We took it back, we've been backwards and forwards, and we've got a thing that actually will bring in an income. It will be paid. As you can see, some of it's already offset on some of it, and as we grow that business, it will actually offset all of that. It will actually make a profit for our council. So, I'll just move on to another few things that I've mentioned. Antisocial behaviour. That is a big, big problem. My ward suffers with it badly. But actually, some of it's the council. But actually, do you know what it is? The reason it's got so bad is the Conservative cuts to policing. Yeah. We've got no youth service at all. That's been cut. There's nothing actually for any of these children. So there's very well saying that Harlow Council should be out and we should be talking about it. We don't. I do it daily. There is things in there. You just haven't looked enough to actually combat some of that. And we'll make a release about it and you'll find out when you've looked at it properly. But that isn't our problem. As a council, we can't fund everything. We'd love to. But of course, as we all know, since the Conservatives come into power in 2010, we've lost over 50% of our budget. So every time we're looking at it. And so, do you know, we are investing in our town. There are lots of, I could keep going, I've got 5 minutes and I should have made more of notes, but I will definitely be supporting our budget because we are looking for everybody in our town.
Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, just very briefly. I was slightly amused by Councillor Perrin's remark about discretionary budget. I seem to remember when we first started removing items from the discretionary budget, bringing it into the main budget. We were then told that if you did that, you would put those items under threat because you only were doing that on a year-on-year basis, whereas if they remained in the discretionary budget, they could go on forever, effectively. So on the one hand, you seem to be claiming now that there are things in the discretionary budget that need to come into the main budget, and I may well agree with you on that. But whereas on another occasion, you make exactly the opposite, the same sort of opposite argument. Talk about Orwellian. As far as this budget is concerned, I find it fascinating to hear the Tories sort of say year on year on year, it's possible to keep the budget below the...
Can I ask a question under 16.13 personal explanation? A councillor can make a personal explanation at any time. A personal explanation may relate to some material part of an area speech by the councillor. Thank you. I have never said at any time in previous years that bringing things into the base budget puts them at risk.
Yes, you have.
In fact, that seems to be your default, Councillor, is just to laugh at everything. We've seen that.
Because you actually have said that in a public meeting.
Chair, am I not allowed to speak?
I mean,
Councillor Mullins.
it's Mollard.
Sorry, Mullard. I do apologise.
Oh, okay, fine.
Sorry, I thought Councillor Susan was chairing the meeting. So, I have mentioned in the past about bringing things into the base budget, and when we put things into the discretionary services fund, the administration has said those things were at risk, and we have brought things back in our proposals year after year after year because we recognise that they will be on a safe footing, but we said because something is in the discretionary service fund does not necessarily put them at risk. We were merely adopting the administration's point of view on that when they kept telling us that they were. Thank you.
That was clear.
Carry on, Tony.
As far as Councillor Charles is concerned, and the Conservatives, year on year they say, oh, it's possible to come in, you know, we can freeze the budget, we can cut the budget, we can carry on. But we've heard this evening of some of the demands on this council. We know the demands as far as HMOs are concerned. We know that we've got a growing town. We know that we've got huge pressures on our services. And it's not unreasonable, it seems to me, to actually, for the portfolio holders and the officers, to sit down and say, where are the pressures, what needs to be addressed, and for us then to invest some money in a very open and transparent way, but to invest some money into actually addressing those issues. We've got, and like Councillor Harvey, I was at the meeting with Public Health England this afternoon. I was also at a meeting, a growth board meeting yesterday, when it was talking about the opportunities that are going to be coming into this town. Now, in order to prepare for those opportunities, we have to have officers within this council who can actually address some of those issues and do the necessary spade work. And that means a bit of investment. And if we get that, and if we put some investment in, then we will get the returns. Yeah. If we don't put the investment in, we won't get the returns. It's as simple as that, really. So I would like to say that I fully support this budget. I think it's a good budget. I mean, in terms of the additional cost, it's pence a week or whatever it may happen to be. It's a marginal amount. But in terms of the possible ways that those increased resources can, and the return that we'll get on those increased resources is well worth it. So please, I for one am fully going to be supporting this budget this evening. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak before Councillor Davis? Councillor Davis.
Sorry, Chair, I wasn't going to speak because so much has been said, but we need to set the record straight. The Tories established the discretionary fund, they called it the Big Society Fund, and they let the museum, they had no finances for the Playhouse. When we came in, there was no finances for planning. That had an important Carnwood Nature Reserve, which functions very well, was given away. With the discretionary fund, bit by bit by bit, we've actually tried to wind up services. But let's remind ourselves that since 2010, I know they don't like a history lesson, the Conservative government has year on year on year on year has cut the funding of this authority. And there's no certainty now in terms of the present budget. Apparently we're being told today, despite all the promises that were made in the general election only a month ago, there's going to be a 5%, it's envisaged there will be a 5% cut in local authority spending generally. the Chancellor's actually told all the departments to actually bring forward a 5% cut. So its discretionary service fund hopefully will be wound down. All those services will actually eventually slowly be taken back in because of certainty. But we can only do it slowly because the government has actually cut the budget, and we need to actually make sure that these things happen year on year and assure those people. We will do it, and it will happen, and the discretionary fund that funds paddling pools, which are all up in the air at the moment for reinvestment and possible new paddling pools, the Youth Council, the funding of Pond and Nature Wood Reserve and the Guild Gallery are the things that just remain in that fund. And at the end of the day, they will be taken back, but it takes a long time to undo the mess that was absolutely created unnecessarily all that time ago.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start with an apology, actually. I interrupted you, Councillor Charles, in your speech. I shouldn't have done, that was wrong. But I do get rather overexcited when you speak. It reminds me of when I was young and I sat on my mother's knee and I watched Jack and Laurie. I love children's fiction, and that's what that was, stories for children. Let's address some of his fiction. He speaks about how we should have adopted a private sector approach to employing new staff. Now look, this is the Councillor Charles who opposed HTS. Then he approved HTS, a council-owned building. Now he's opposing council staff, and presumably at some point, once they've proved their worth, he will approve those as well. It's an interesting journey you go on, Councillor Charles. You speak about expansion of staff, not bringing improvements. I think the Tory government found when they cut 20,000 police officers and the chaos that ensued with crime in this country, that cutting staff harms public services. And if employing more staff doesn't bring benefits, why is your hero Boris employing an extra 20,000 police officers? It's a waste of money, surely, in your world. You complain about slow delivery. Yep. And then you complain about new posts to address council priorities and improve. A very strange world you live in. And while we're on the subject of fiction, Councillor Perry, honestly, you are a faker. You talk about being the real champion of green issues. Look, Councillor Perry, I spent a lovely morning the other day with Councillor Charles and Councillor Carter planting trees. It was good, wasn't it? There were lots of Labour councillors there. Shame is that's only one of 3 planting sessions. One of them was in your ward, Councillor Perry. You didn't go to any of them. Not one Tory councillor from Sumners and Kingsmore planted a tree in Sumners and Kingsmore. You're a faker, a windbag.
I was cycling with my children.
Good for you. I took my children to plant trees. I apologise for interrupting.
I cut down trees instead of it.
So let's get on to
Please do.
It's a fiction, you can't hold it in his head.
Councillor Chair.
I'm sorry, Chair. Just taking my leave from there.
So,
Councillor Perry, behave yourself.
So now that Jack and Norrie's over, let's get on to a serious summing up of a serious matter, the budget for Harlow Council. In this carefully crafted budget, councillors, Harlow Labour are offering hope, ambition and a positive plan for the future, investing in people, investing in jobs, investing in communities. The Harlow Tories proposals have been tested and they failed. Councillor Johnson talks about, but they've been fully costed for 3 years. And Councillor Perrin talks about, but we can only plan for 3 years. You were told of the serious concerns after that 3-year period. There is no point saying it balances for 3 years if you have been told there is a huge budget black hole thereafter, and you were told. They are offering cuts down the line to address that black hole. More austerity through the back door. A financial black hole in 3 years of enormous proportion. We've heard them protest about our below inflation increase, but we've heard nothing about them, about the much larger council tax increases forced upon hard-pressed council residents by the Tories in Essex and in government. Why is that, Councillor Johnson?
Because I'm not a member of either of those.
And I would say it's because you don't really care about the residents of Harlow.
Right.
You simply want to score some cheap points while covering up for the failures of your Conservatives mates in Essex County Council and the government. Councillors, if you think Harlow residents deserve to live in a confident, forward-looking town, if you think Harlow residents deserve their community assets to be preserved over the long term and not just for the next 3 years, if you think we should have more social housing for the children of Harlow families to live in, if you think we should fix drafty windows...
Sorry, Chair. I think the Chairman's having a conversation with someone
No,
else and
I
he's
was just
listening.
basically telling Councillor Johnson to be quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair, I didn't realise that.
I'll start that bit again.
Oh, it was very good.
Thank you. I liked it.
Yeah, I know.
So, councillors, if you think Harlow residents deserve to live in a confident, forward-looking town,
Vote Tory.
if you...
Councillor Johnson,
Yeah, send him off.
be careful.
Red card.
Yes, Chair.
Do not interrupt Councillor Ingalls while he's speaking.
Oh.
Or I will...
So he's allowed to interrupt me and my colleagues.
So be careful.
Yes, Chair.
Try start again from the beginning.
No. Even we don't want to.
Councillors, if you think Harlow residents deserve to live in a confident, forward-looking town, if you think Harlow residents deserve their community assets to be preserved over the long term and not just for the next 3 years, if you think we should have more social housing for the children of Harlow families to live in, if you think we should fix drafty windows and replace inefficient boilers...
Chair, his time's running.
Councillor Johnson, you interrupted. And I had to...
Oh, don't let him start again.
Let him carry on.
I'm going to do that last night. And I have the time to do it.
Chair, 16.12. The point of order is that there should be a 5-minute limit to speakers, and that's what's been agreed.
Oh, Chair, this
I've had 5 minutes, Chair.
No, because you've been interrupted.
Correct.
Carry on.
I'm going to start that paragraph again and I'm going to finish it. Councillors, if you think Harlow residents deserve to live in a confident, forward-looking town,
We do.
if you think Harlow residents deserve their community assets to be preserved over the long term and not just for 3 years,
We do.
if you think we should have more social housing for the children of Harlow families to live in,
We do.
if you think we should fix drafty windows and replace inefficient boilers,
We do.
if you think we should plant more trees, more electric charging points for vehicles and initiatives to reduce plastic waste, and if you think our children deserve decent play areas and our elderly deserve dignity in retirement, then I urge you to vote yes for this budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we go to the main vote for the substantive motion.
I'm not sure now.
Just one more time.
Once more.
I'll call members in order, name order, vote for, against or abstain. Councillor David Carter.
Against.
Councillor Simon Carter.
Against.
Councillor Joel Charles.
Against.
Councillor Nick Churchill.
Against.
Councillor Jean Clark.
For.
Councillor Mike Danvers.
For.
Councillor Bob Davis.
For.
Councillor Jodie Dunn.
For.
Councillor Tony Durkin.
For.
Councillor Tony Edwards.
For.
Councillor Tony Hall.
Against.
Councillor Eugenie Harvey.
For.
Councillor Maggie Hawkwood.
For.
Councillor Mark Ingle.
For.
Councillor Shannon Jezard. Councillor Andrew Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Shona Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Sue Livings.
Against.
Councillor Francis Mason.
For.
Councillor Stephen Mullard.
For.
Councillor Russell Perrin.
Against.
Councillor Danny Purton.
For.
Councillor Lane Shears.
4.
Councillor Clive Souter.
Abstain.
Councillor John Stratton.
4.
Councillor Emma Toll.
4.
Councillor Chris Vince.
4.
Councillor Nancy Watson.
4.
Councillor Mark Wilkinson.
4.
So it's 19 for, 10 against, 1 abstention.
Oh God, that was close.
Let's go forward.
Right, item 10 on the agenda, report from officers, there are none. Item 11, minutes from cabinet and committee meetings, there have been noted. Noted. Matters of urgent business, there are none. You're all welcome to be in the chairman's chamber for